Hi, I'm Charlotte,
And I'm Oscar.
and we're the F1 couple. And today we are chatting all about the Monaco Grand Prix, having a chat about who we think the winners are and the losers, and just generally giving our opinion on the race. So, Oscar, do you want to start?
Yeah, sure. And I think, as has become a bit of a tradition, in terms of starting the winners, we'll start with the winner of the race, and that was, of course, Verstappen.
Okay, before you go on, I think I remember you saying in one of the very early podcasts that you weren't going to put the winner of the race in every week.
Yeah, I know, but it was just such a good performance from him. I think. I mean,
Sure.
the season we've had so far, when it's been him and Hamilton going toe to toe, like every race, it's been pretty much the case that if the one that wins the race, of course they're going to have to be in this winners section.
I hear a cop out. Anyway, so yeah, Verstappen, I am fully kidding. There is absolutely no doubt that he had to be in this category because it was just unbelievable. Like from the start of the race, there was just nobody touched him.
Yeah, it was just pretty dominant, and a dominant display with Mercedes not performing as they should have been during this race. He just, yeah, like you said, just led from the front. Didn't ever look like giving that up, really. And to be honest, I don't have that much more to say for it. It was a nice, boring race for Max, wasn't it?
Yeah, I don't know. It was nice. Like, I think it was really funny when the engineer was just like, "Hey, how you doing, Max? You right there?" And he was like, "Yeah, I'm fine."
Remember to take on water.
I don't think that was this time. I think, but yeah, it was just nice for him. Like I feel like he got a really what's the word? He got a tough deal, rough stick, something about.
Rough end of the stick. Is that a thing?
He had a tough time in Barcelona. Was the last one, right? Wasn't it? And I was. We know I was upset about it, and honestly, like it was just nice for him to have his turn.
Yeah.
That's very in depth knowledge of F1 that, isn't it? But yeah, like it was just nice to see him getting a chance without. Honestly, it's just nice seeing Mercedes screw up.
Yeah.
I said this to you on Sunday actually. Like I feel like everybody watching it was kind of like yes when when Bottas's thing didn't work. I know we're going to talk about it a bit later, but yeah. It was good for him. I'm happy for him, and it's nice that he's finally leading the championship. I think the best part about it, I think, is the fact that there is finally competition.
Yeah, I said in the last podcast after Barcelona that if there wasn't a freak result, a bit like we've had now, then it felt like Hamilton and Mercedes were just going to sort of run away with it a bit. So it was good in that respect for Mercedes to have very much an off weekend. Max be on peak form and close that championship, take the championship lead. But it's much closer now as well.
See, I pretty clearly remember disagreeing with you. You were very much of the opinion last time that was kind of it, and I was like, no, you just wait. And like I know you said it's like a freak result, but honestly, yeah, okay, what happened to Bottas is a freak result. But honestly, Hamilton just underperformed, and I don't think there's anything freak about that. He just had a bad weekend, and that happens.
Yeah,
I know it doesn't overly happen to Hamilton, but you know, it's not like anything went wrong with the car. Okay, the strategy a little bit. Again, I know we're going to talk about it later, but he just wasn't good enough this weekend.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, it's a fair point. It's not one of his favourite tracks, and the car underperformed, and he underperformed pretty much. But shall we move on to another winner?
I think that's a good idea.
Try to stop talking about the losers while talking about the winners.
Yeah, I also think I could talk about Max all day. So
yeah.
Yeah, so I guess the other person, and I think we were both really pleased to see this happen, was Vettel. It was so refreshing to actually see him do well. And he qualified in 8th, which was just great. And then the strategy and the team was insane.
Yeah.
For him to, I mean, again, going back to Hamilton, he was so annoyed. And what did he finish? 5th?
Vettel, yeah.
5th. And that's just, I was just really pleased for him.
Yeah, absolutely. It was a good race by him. I mean, the thing with Monaco is you just sort of, it's not really about having a good race. It's about having a good qualifying and then having good strategy.
Yeah.
You don't necessarily need to have like a barnstorming race. But his was pretty good. He did pretty much the only kind of overtake of the race on Gasly. I say kind of because he came out of the pits slightly ahead, so he was kind of already passed, but then holding it going up the hill towards Casino Square, that was
Yeah, it was good.
yeah, it was really good. It was just super annoying. I was so annoyed when they cut away from it.
I don't want to relive that.
I was actually shouting at the TV like, "Oh my god, what are you doing?" And then the audacity to do it twice when they were showing the replay.
Even the commentators were like, "Come on, what are you doing?" They clearly don't want to show this bit, do they?
Yeah.
Have you seen it yet?
Yeah, I have seen it.
I haven't, but
it was good, but I mean, Gasly kind of backed out of it by the time it got to the left-hander, so it was still a great move, like no doubt, but yeah, wasn't super present. It would have just, maybe it's because we already knew what the outcome was as well when I saw the clip after, but yeah.
Yeah, so I guess the next people is, and I know that you were really excited that they were on the podium together, but like Sainz and Norris.
Yeah, I think I grouped them together.
Lando.
Yeah, I think I grouped them together in the last podcast after Spain as well, for slightly different reasons. Just I think they were worthy mentions, but they sort of just both had meh races.
Do you know that they're not teammates anymore?
I do know they're not teammates, but I grouped them because they both like kind of underperformed compared to their teammates. Their teammates both had good races at Barcelona, but this was certainly their weekend to really perform. Both of them qualified well. I think Sainz was pretty annoyed after the red flag, but as was Verstappen and Bottas. It seemed they all thought they were about to put a pole lap in.
But they would say that.
Yeah. They were all going fast though, but yeah, I mean, you can't really know what would happen. But he was annoyed after that. I think to be honest, Norris did a great job in qualifying anyway. I don't think they certainly didn't expect the McLaren to be that quick this weekend, and it looked
something
like
crazy, like 2/10 off Bottas, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Or like something crazy, tiny margin.
Yeah, I think it was something like half tenths. Was it? I don't really know, to be honest.
Maybe it was 2 100ths.
Yeah.
That sounds too. There was a very small margin.
Yeah. But yeah, they both qualified well, and then they both, raced fine. Like I said before, it's mostly about the qualifying and then just getting a strategy right. And ultimately, due to Leclerc not starting and Bottas having his thing go on in the pits, being stuck there,
just
rather
thing.
Yeah. They just sort of inherited. Well, Sainz was sort of there by merit after Leclerc, and then they both bumped up a place after Bottas DNF'd. But deserved. I think.
My goodness! Do you remember about 10 laps in, and I was like, "Oh, do you know what? Verstappen, Sainz, Norris podium," and you were like, "Nah, that's never going to happen." Do you remember?
I don't remember. No.
Oh, of course.
I believe you though.
If you don't know, Oscar has a really shocking memory.
Yeah. I remember F1 stuff. That's what takes up all of my memory.
Who I am is a whole other thing.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was exciting, and especially your sister, she was particularly pleased about it.
Yeah, she was definitely pleased. I think it was a fairly feel-good podium overall. Second youngest podium ever after Brazil in 2019.
But was that the same people?
Well, in Brazil,
yeah.
It was Gasly instead of Norris.
Right.
Sainz and Verstappen were both there as well.
I thought there was a really young one when Gasly won it.
Yeah, I think that might have been...
Was that the second youngest?
The second youngest, or possibly the third youngest at the time.
Anyway, that's irrelevant. And then the final winner, shall we?
Yeah, I think it has to be Ocon. He's strung together quite a few good races. He's probably been one of the strongest drivers at the start of the season. Maybe that's a bit of a bold claim, but what he's been doing in that car has been really good. And especially this weekend, he's completely wiped the floor with Alonso. Qualifying, he was 11th, Alonso was 17th. And then in the race, he came home 9th with Alonso in 13th. So, yeah, really, really getting another one over him. And to be honest, the Alpine, we thought it had taken a step back in Barcelona. It appears to have taken another step back there. Obviously, Monaco's a bit of a weird track, and it's not exactly representative of the whole calendar, and you obviously saw that with Mercedes slipping back as well. But they seem to take a big step back, especially with Alonso. He was in qualifying only ahead of the two Haas and one Williams. It's not really great. But yeah, Ocon, he managed to drag 2 points out of the race, which I thought was very impressive.
Sorry, just going back. I appreciate that he probably would have been there anyway, but it's only really ahead of one Haas.
Yeah, I know. He was still ahead of two. It's not like one of them qualified ahead of him.
I was just trying to amplify how bad the weekend really was. But
yeah.
I think the cool thing with Ocon actually was that it wasn't yes, okay, Alonso had a shocking weekend, but it was he did well in himself. It wasn't just in comparison. And I feel like I need to eat my words a little bit, because I think in the very first podcast we said, I was like, nah, I don't think Ocon's up to much. I don't really rate him as a driver. I have completely changed my mind.
Yeah, you definitely said he seemed pretty average to you.
Well, I think in fairness, he was pretty average to me at the time, but I do think he's really shone this season. And I like to think that he heard the podcast and he was like, right, I know what I need to do now. I've heard it and I need to buck my ideas up.
Yeah, that's it. We've certainly made that happen.
Yeah, it wasn't me, was it?
Yeah.
But yeah, that was it really.
Yeah, I mean, it was again more through strategy than anything else, managing to get ahead of Giovinazzi. But you could see in that moment that his car was a lot slower than the Alfa Romeo. And he managed to hold on. Obviously, there's no real overtaking spot around Monaco with these cars. So it's not quite as difficult as maybe it seems. But yeah, I think it was still a great job. And qualifying, probably getting as much out of the car as he could have done. And certainly in the race, doing exactly that. So yeah, I think that caps off the winners nicely. And now we'll move on to some of the people who maybe did a little less well. And I think the best place to start with this will be...
I don't want to.
will be Leclerc, who, yeah, I mean, obviously it was sort of the biggest talking point of the weekend, really, wasn't it? Obviously he put in a very good lap and got us all excited going on provisional pole in Q3. And then when everyone came out to do their final runs, he lost some time in the beginning of the lap and was pushing a little bit too hard towards the end, and obviously put it in the wall, and that guaranteed him pole at the time. But then Ferrari obviously gave us that little bit of false hope, well, quite a lot of false hope actually, on the Saturday, saying that after initial observations the gearbox seemed fine, and then on the Sunday just before the race saying, yeah, we've done all our checks and the gearbox is all intact and all the damage has been repaired. And then he goes out for his lap to the grid and the drive shaft has failed. Big disappointment. Super sad. For audio listeners, Lotz is putting a very sad face.
I'm not sure I was actually conscious of that. I was just really upset that you were just making me relive it.
Yeah.
I think that has to be one of the most heartbreaking things that I've seen while watching F1, aside from what happened to George in the Mercedes.
Yeah, that was pretty bad as well. But this being in his home race as well, and the fact that he's had pretty much no luck in his home race before.
But I mean, he crashed on purpose.
Yeah. Well,
I obviously don't think that happened.
Yeah, I think certainly when it came to the fact that he wasn't going to start the race, anyone who thought that before was then quickly shut up.
Do you know what, actually, speaking of that, I saw actually, I'm going to say two things about Max. The first thing was I saw him stand up for Charles, and I liked that.
Yeah.
He was sort of saying that, if you were going to do it on purpose, you wouldn't do it in that fashion.
Yeah.
And he had every faith that he hadn't done something dirty, which I liked. The second thing is that this was something I saw on Instagram earlier, I think. Anyway, so I was scrolling, and Max's post about, you know, the teamwork that had gone into the weekend, and someone had commented on it like, oh, is that one of your team that went and messed up Charles' car? And it just made me laugh.
Yeah.
It wasn't me. I wish it had been me, but it wasn't me.
Yeah. Well, I'm hoping there wasn't any sabotage. That would obviously be incredibly frowned upon. I think the only sabotage is really Leclerc sabotaging himself, ultimately.
Do you know what? I actually was getting really frustrated when they were saying, well, it's his own fault. Because, yeah, all right, he crashed. But first of all, he definitely was not the first person to crash there that day.
Yeah.
Like, it's an easy thing to do. And second, really, it's on the team. That it's not his job to make sure that his car is fixed. Like, yeah, okay, he messed it up in the first place. But he kind of did his bit. He got pole. And then they should have checked it properly. And I appreciate it's difficult to check it while it's stationary. It would have been impossible to fix it in the time that they found out. But at the same time, I think they should have taken the penalty.
Yeah, I agree, but it's a tough one because it wasn't anything to do with the gearbox. I think if they'd have changed the gearbox, I don't necessarily know if they would have still found the problem.
Yeah,
they might have done.
I feel like if you're going in for something, you might have found the other problem, you know?
Yeah.
I don't really know how these things work, but I know it wasn't anything to do with the gearbox in the end, but I don't know.
I don't know the exact regulations around it either, because if they're, obviously the parc fermé applies, and if they don't change the gearbox, I mean, they're not going to be changing anything. They're allowed to repair stuff that's damaged, but there's very strict rules around which bits can be replaced. So I don't know if they'd have taken the 5-place penalty for the gearbox, whether they'd been able to repair everything to do with the drive shaft as well, and just like full on replace that. Because with it, I mean, I believe that they repaired all the damage they could immediately see with their car.
Yeah, no, I don't doubt that.
When they go out, something that, you know, has a tiny crack in it, basically, that maybe you can't even see with the eye, then that just, as soon as you fire up the car and do a bit of running and put some forces through it, that breaks, and then that's the
Yeah,
the
no,
car
I
gone.
know, but like, I think we're going to go on too much about this, so maybe we should move on. But yeah, I don't know. I just, basically what I was saying was I was just frustrated with everybody saying, oh, it was his fault.
Yeah.
Because like that's not on.
Yeah, I think it has to be, you have to blame both parties, really.
Well, they're a team.
Yeah, exactly. If Leclerc doesn't put it in the wall, then there's no problem because there's nothing to
But then he
fix.
may not have had pole.
Yeah, but he may not have had pole, but what would you rather have, a car that's smashed up, that's in first, or a car that's not smashed up in maybe second?
I feel like we're going down the shoulda, woulda, coulda kind of
Yeah,
thing.
yeah.
And
I mean, it's impossible to know. Like, if he hadn't put it in the wall, what would have happened? Would he have still been first? Probably not, because he was going slower and other people were going quicker. But then also Sainz, he could have been on pole. Then Ferrari could have still been on pole. But you know, it's impossible. It's impossible to know now.
Yeah, but also, like, he could have then crashed out. Sainz.
Yeah.
Like, I
mean, he had about like 2 corners left to crash.
He
out
could
on,
have crashed.
But he could have.
My point is that we just can't discuss it because we don't know, and we're never going to know because that didn't happen. So we are just wasting our time.
Yeah, ultimately.
I'm being Max.
Yeah, ultimately, Leclerc's fault for crashing, Ferrari's fault for not finding the issue with the car, and it all culminated in a DNS, did not start, and that's about as bad as it gets, really.
Shall we move on?
Yeah.
Speaking of tragedies.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the only other person to, I mean, I think we'll group Mercedes together because it was just a really rotten weekend for them in general. But yeah, Bottas the only other person to not see the checkered flag. Obviously.
I don't actually know that because I fell asleep.
Yeah. He did. I think in general he did a really good job this weekend, completely outpacing Hamilton. I was a weird one for Mercedes, to be honest, because they seemed like they were pretty much there with. It seemed like it's going to be a really close battle between Ferrari, Red Bull, and Mercedes after practice on Thursday. And
But
then
you say that, but Hamilton was still behind in practice.
yeah, I know, but it still looked like it was going to be close between them all.
Hmm.
And then I don't know what happened, but they had a day off and clearly made some changes to the car. And come Saturday, it was not looking quick anymore. And in qualifying, I think Hamilton, super underperformed for what he should, because as we've seen so many times before, he's great at pulling out performances from a car that's not necessarily the best. We've seen that when he was at McLaren, and I'm thinking to like races like last year in Turkey, when his car was clearly not the fastest one for that particular track, and then pulled out a win by actually quite a long distance in the end. So I would still expected more from him, but seventh, maybe that was the genuine pace of the Mercedes with the setup that it had on it for that moment.
I know that they were definitely still fiddling with Bottas's car just before, was it qualifying? Yeah, it was qualifying, wasn't it? And so they clearly knew that there was something not quite right in practice, that they needed to be fiddling with it. So I kind of completely disagree with you that he was fine and that they were looking fine in practice, because they weren't.
Yeah, but I still think on the Thursday they were the third quickest car at worst. Certainly there, the Red Bull and Ferrari. But then come qualifying time and Hamilton's down in seventh behind a Red Bull, two Ferraris, his teammate, and then also a McLaren and an Alfa Tauri as well. Not exactly great. If that's where Mercedes genuinely were on pace, that's like the fifth. That's like the sixth quickest car. So I'm sure that's not actually where they.
Or the third, because Bottas.
Yeah.
Hamilton just had a really bad day.
He did. He had a completely off weekend.
It has to happen sometimes. It makes life interesting.
And I think it came at a track that isn't his strongest either. When he and Rosberg were duking it out for titles, he usually came off second best around Monaco.
I've seen that Monaco thing multiple times.
Yeah.
With Martin Brundle.
Yeah.
His secret cinema or something.
Yes.
I can pretty much quote the thing now. Anyway, enough about Hamilton. Bottas. I'm so with his car. Did we talk about that already?
No. I think just we talked about that he did a good job in qualifying, getting the P3, then starting P2 once Leclerc was a non-starter.
Oh, it was still P3. He was still in the same.
But then running like a pretty comfortable P2, not putting Verstappen under massive pressure, but not really feeling the heat from behind either. And then came in for his pit stop and just stayed there. It was a really weird incident. I've seen wheels getting stuck before and taking a while to come off, but I've not ever seen a wheel just be completely lodged, unable to be moved, and just welded on. And I think you said that jokingly, but it is still on there. They've had to leave it on to take it back to the factory, I believe. Yeah, properly welded onto the car.
Why don't they just do that whole mixed set of tyres thing? They've done that before.
Yeah. Well, yeah. They still needed to change them quite quickly. I know.
But yeah, it was. That was my second heartbreak of the weekend, because he was doing so well. I feel like it's getting. I won't say it's getting more rare, but I don't actually know if it is. That he has weekends where you can see his confidence and that he's clearly doing well, because I know he's pretty mellow, but I also think he gets quite affected by having Hamilton as a teammate, which I think is a given. But yeah, that was really frustrating for him. I want to see him do well. I think most people want to see him do well.
Yeah, I think most people do want to see him do well in general. I think most people want to see probably 90% of the drivers on the grid do well. They have a couple that they don't particularly like.
That was, yeah.
But yeah, I think it was just a very Bottas thing to happen, where he's having one of his strongest weekends. He doesn't have, like, I think in a season maybe he has 2 or 3 weekends when he's really, really on it. And it's very Bottas thing when he's really on it, and then it's a car failure that lets him down. I'm thinking back to maybe, I think it was Azerbaijan in, I don't know, maybe 2018, when, actually, to be fair, that time he wasn't having a massive weekend, but he was leading the race with 1 lap to go and then had a puncture and DNF'd.
I was thinking more recently.
Yeah, what, Sakir last year, yeah.
That sad face is back.
Yeah.
Okay, let's move on because Mercedes is
Yeah.
making me real sad.
I think in summary, Mercedes, sad face.
No, that was a thumbs down.
That was a sad face and a
No,
thumbs
that was a
down.
thumbs down and a big smile.
And losing both championship leads, that's not something that's happened for a long time.
Wait, they lost both?
Yeah.
They've lost the constructors as well?
Yeah, they're about, I think they're just 1 point, 2 points behind the
I
constructors.
didn't know that. This is what happens when I fall asleep at the end of the race. And then you were like, oh no, the football's on, so no interviews for you.
Yeah.
It's very upsetting.
I think it's fair enough.
I don't think it's fair enough. I wanted to see the interviews and I still haven't. Anyway, shall we move on? Because, time.
Yeah.
Right.
I think
This is another sad one and I really don't want to talk about it.
Yeah, I think the thing with this race was I had quite a lot of people who were winners, like more winners than losers. But I think the people who lost hard this weekend, and the final one we've got is Ricciardo.
I actually think that he lost hard, as you put it, least out of all of them.
Yeah, I think out of these ones he probably lost, hard,
but
at least much.
Yeah, but I mean, it's better than Spain or Portugal, whichever one. Portugal?
Portugal. When?
Q1.
Yeah, Portugal
I
was
always get
out
that
in
confused.
Q1.
Yeah, okay. It was better than Portugal, like the whole weekend, I would say. However, it's just not up there with Norris, and it's...
Yeah, I mean...
Why are you smirking at
it was
me?
just Portugal was a very low baseline to be beating. It still wasn't a good weekend by any stretch of the imagination.
But I think it's quite clear that he's still getting used to the car, and it's really alien to him. And I was talking to Sainz about it. I don't know. Did you see this interview? I sit there and I'm really sad, and I watch all the between.
Yeah,
stuff.
no, I think I saw this after the second, the second
And
race.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway, and he was saying that Carlos had sort of gone, "Car's really weird, isn't it?" And he was like, "Yeah, you could have told me." So I think the McLaren is just a very odd one. I was going to say something deep, but odd one will do. And it clearly suits Norris. I think it has suited Norris for... I mean, I guess it's his only Formula 1 car, right?
Yeah.
So maybe... I will say he doesn't know any better because I know he's driven cars before, but maybe it's just taking Ricciardo that time. I'm almost losing faith that he's going to find it in the car, to be honest. But yeah, it was a sad one. But I was less sad for him than I was for Bottas and Leclerc.
Yeah. I think the thing is Mercedes...
And Schumacher, actually.
Yeah. The thing is Mercedes have been, they've been up there as the best team for, the last however many years. 5 now. 6 maybe. And Leclerc, just absolute heartbreak. But Ricciardo was just poor. Just a really poor weekend. I mean, this is a place where he's taken pole twice. He's won once and should have won twice. And there he is out in Q2 and getting lapped by his teammate.
That was a really...
Yeah.
Okay, that was a sad moment.
Yeah, it wasn't even like it was a couple of laps to go. I think it was, 40 laps in out of...
I thought you were going to say 40 laps to go. I was like, it was not 40 laps to go.
But...
Although saying that, actually, they're pretty much the same thing.
Yeah, it wasn't exactly late on in the race. And finishing P12, which was where he started as well. But given that 2 people in front of him dropped behind him in terms of both Bottas and Leclerc.
Thank you. I didn't know that.
It was proper stinking, really. Just, I'm surprised because he is someone that I always have up, and to be honest, still do have up there as one of the stars of the grid, really. But if you compare him to Sainz at the Ferrari going to a new team, and Sainz is now. I think. I mean, to be honest, it only took him really two races, maybe like in his third race, he was pretty much there, fit nailed into the car and putting in laps that looked like he had confidence in it. But now Ricciardo, he's Spain. He looked like he was there, getting there, but after this race, he just looks like he's taken a massive step back again in terms of where he's at with the car. I mean, if you look at the other newbies as well, Vettel, he seems like he's pretty much there with the car now.
Alonso?
Yeah, Alonso not so much. I don't really know what's going on with him, because he seemed like he was straight there with it in Bahrain. He seemed to gel well with the car, but since then he's been really outclassed by Ocon.
Someone commented on one of your tweets actually, like he just should never have come back.
Yeah,
it's like, whoa, harsh.
I'm sure to be honest, he's feeling a bit like that. He qualifying 17th and finishing well outside the points.
It makes me mad because I appreciate that Islet was a Ferrari junior, Ferrari junior, but it's like, I say this every time, like just should have just let him have it.
Yeah, he's on a 2-year contract, Alonso. But I wouldn't necessarily be surprised if he walked away after this year, especially that Renault Alpine have their driver academy, and they have Zhou and
you thought Zhou was going to go up last
I thought Zhou was going to. I thought before.
Well, earlier in the season.
Yeah, I thought earlier in the season, probably before the season started, and after a couple of rounds, that Zhou would go up. But come season's end, he wasn't really in the championship fight.
Wasn't he just mathematically or something?
Yeah, I don't think so. I don't think he was.
I thought it was.
Tsunoda was in it, just like mathematically, still in it.
But I thought Zhou was as well.
No, I don't think so. He was.
There was a whole bunch of them that were mathematically in it until.
Yeah, he was.
Anyway,
he finished quite far down though. But this year, he's leading F2 championship, I believe, at the moment.
Yes, still, I believe.
Yeah, if not, then he's certainly in the top 2.
So is Piastri second? Or have I completely made that up?
Piastri's now Alpine Junior as well. Wouldn't necessarily be surprised to see him go up if he wins
of the two, I'd rather Piastri went up.
Yeah, I think he's. I mean, obviously he won F3 last year, and he's looked super strong in F2 this year. If he wins that as well,
New Russell.
I think it would be super difficult for Alpine to not put him in that car, or maybe he'll start looking around at other seats he can get into.
We have fully diverted.
We've really diverted.
Should we leave that and move on?
Back in Ricciardo, rubbish weekend.
And onto the honourable mentions.
One to forget, and time to move on to those other drivers worthy of a mention. And to be honest, for me, I think it's just the rest of the people we haven't covered who finish in the points. If we start with Perez. He was close to being driver of the day. In the end, I think Vettel won it from him. But I couldn't put him as a winner because he just had a really poor Saturday in qualifying, coming 9th when Verstappen's there on the front row. Not really good enough. Okay,
but what would have happened if Leclerc hadn't have crashed?
Oh
no, I was joking. Please don't go down that.
Same thing for Hamilton. Same thing for pretty much everyone, though. If you think about a hit like Perez and Hamilton, they probably would have been a couple of places further up if they'd got a final run in. But that's not how it works. And he did qualify 9th. But then, no overtaking moves in the race, but great strategy. Something we've come to know from Perez throughout his whole career is that he can take tyres a really long way into a race and make things work that way. And that's exactly what he did. Jumping from, he would have been P7, I guess, up to P4 after the pit stops, getting ahead of Hamilton, Gasly, and Vettel.
I think I completely missed this. I'm not sure. I remember Hamilton going, when Bono was like, Hamilton, just to let you know that Perez is now P6 or whatever, and then Hamilton lost it. But I liked my Bono impression.
Yeah, it was good.
Quite a good Bono impression. I really don't remember. I don't remember.
Well, it's because it didn't help that the TV direction was like really bad.
I,
To cutting away from the only real track battle and just seeming to not really give the viewers a good narration of it through the videography that was presented.
oh, and now we're taking down Sky.
Yeah, no, but it's not them. It's they're not in charge of what cameras there are.
I was just joking.
What actually happens in Monaco is they have a different TV director to what they do every other race. It's a local one, which was why it was pretty subpar, and hopefully they'll change that in future. Cause,
So tax reasons, it's in Monaco.
yeah, probably. But yeah, where were we? Talking about Perez jumping up. I think because there was no real clear narrative about the pit stops, and that's the only thing that causes positional changes. We didn't necessarily see it. They were focusing on other things like showing replays of Stroll bumping over curbs and things like that, cutting away to pictures of Serena Williams walking down the pit lane, and all that sort of rubbish.
Yeah, the Serena Williams thing really annoyed me this weekend. Like, great, you're
Yeah.
there, but you're nothing to do with F1, so just go away.
Yeah, it was really strange they're being interviewed when they were interviewing the race winner.
Oh,
Bizarre.
do you know, Verstappen looked really annoyed as well.
Yeah, it's it's just been an awkward time, because if you remember back to when in Barcelona when De La Rosa was interviewing Hamilton after his pole position, there's a really awkward moment where they didn't realise they were live or something. So it's not been great. Not been great.
That
but
was
yeah.
good. But yeah. Anyway, moving on from Perez, Gasly. I'm actually annoyed that he didn't end up in the winners category this weekend, because he was incredible. Like, this qualifying especially. Yeah, okay, he lost position to Vettel and Perez, I guess.
Yeah.
But his qualifying was just ridiculous. Like, and I'm sorry, but he held off Hamilton, like arguably the greatest F1 driver of all time, Gasly, who was rejected from Red Bull. Like, what?
Yeah, I can see arguments for putting you in the winners category. I think he pretty much got everything he could have out of the car, and holding off Hamilton is no mean feat, even if it is around Monaco. But yeah, dropping those two positions wasn't great through the strategy, but I'm not really sure there's anything that he or the AlphaTauri team could have done about that, because they needed to pit, as soon as Hamilton pitted, they needed to pit him to cover him, and they did that and got him out just in front of him. Like, it was really close. But then he's left open to people who are running behind Hamilton before the stops to then run long and be able to overcut him. And that's exactly what happened. He got overcut by two people, but still pretty solid weekend. And that would have been finishing sixth as well. So still, it's good points for the team. Would be his best finish of the season so far as well.
Probably.
Yeah. I don't know all the results by heart, but I can't think of a race where he would have been any higher up than that. So yeah, another really good race. Well, good weekend by him, qualifying.
I know you want to mention Stroll now, but he was one I didn't really notice this weekend.
Yeah,
I think primarily because Vettel did so well, I was just like, oh, whatever, Stroll. And I'm not in the I don't like Stroll camp, which I know a lot of people are. I think he's quite a sweet guy, but not that I know him, obviously. But yeah, and sure, he jumped up a whole bunch of places, but like, maybe this is just the coverage thing again. I just didn't really notice him.
Well, I think the thing was that the way you wouldn't have noticed him was because he was far down at the start, qualifying 13th, and running outside the points for most of the race. But he started, I believe it was on hard tyres, and then he ran really late into the race before he made a stop. So obviously they'd have been focusing on people either at the front or close together on track after they pitted,
him
and he was
over
just
that.
he was just sort of between the two in no man's land. Obviously, he would have had 20 seconds behind to Ocon and Giovinazzi before he pitted, and he was just sort of sitting there 20 seconds behind them, and I don't know how much it was, but probably 10 or 20 seconds behind the person in front of him. So kind of a lonely race, but making that strategy work well, to take him from a position where he would have not been anywhere near points to getting 8th place, and meaning that Aston Martin were the only one of 2 teams to have both cars in the points along with Red Bull.
I was going to say the one had to be Red Bull.
Yeah, which is very impressive. Very impressive. I mean, I don't actually know if that's really on the pace of the car or just the skill of the team in terms of strategy and.
But that's what Formula One is.
Yeah, and they did a great job, and they thoroughly deserved it. And I'm glad to see that they're there scoring points, because it's not been a fun start to the season from them.
Yeah, somebody that you didn't sort of mention before, and I just want to throw in there, Schumacher.
Yeah, I think
I was very sad for him.
Yeah,
I appreciate he didn't necessarily have a good weekend, but I was gutted for him when he couldn't qualify. There we are. There's the word. And then he overtook his teammate, and then I have no idea what happened, but he then fell back, and then I fell asleep. So.
Yeah, I was actually watching a clip earlier, or listening to rather, of his radio, and it seems like he had some sort of full fuel pump pressure failure, which meant he was dropping back, like seconds and seconds a lap from what his actual pace should have been. I don't know what point in the race that was, maybe 20 laps in?
Something like that.
Yeah. But it was an issue that seemed to just sort of fix itself after, I don't know, 2 or 3 laps. I think it must have been just sort of, I don't know exactly how engines work, but fuel not, like, probably the fuel-air ratio being wrong or something like that, and it just needs to clear something from within the car. I am pretty much making stuff up, but it was something like that, where just one of those things that the engineer was saying, oh, it's something that's just going to clear, you're just going to have to deal with it, and they're going through loads of different maps that they do on the steering wheel to try and change different things, and eventually it cleared.
Did he finish 18th?
He did finish last, yeah, but he was still quite close to Mazepin at the end, I think. And I mean, and that's with dropping, I don't know how much it would have been, but probably over a minute during that time with an issue. So he still drove back pretty well from that, and I think he was saying towards the end that he was quicker and he wanted to be let past. But ultimately that didn't happen.
Wonder why?
Yeah, I mean, and on that as well, I think good for Mazepin to finally get something over his teammate, finishing ahead in the race, because he's not really had anything in qualifying or the race to show yet. So,
but I still don't really think he does have anything, because, like you say, it was an issue with the car. He came from last, overtook his teammate, and then I don't know. I'm just probably being a bit harsh, but anyway, shall we wrap up and talk about this last one?
Yeah, I think so. And that's the last person, the person who scored the final point, and that's Giovinazzi. I think he did a really good job all weekend. Good qualifying to get into Q3 with his Alfa Romeo. And he was hassling Ocon pretty much the whole of that second stint. He got jumped by Ocon during the pits, and looked by far the quicker of the two. He looked really like he was being held up by Ocon, and that's credit to Alfa Romeo for giving him a good car this weekend, and Raikkonen was only just behind in 11th as well. So it shows that the car was pretty strong, and if he had have come out of the pits in front of Ocon, I fully expect that he would have finished ahead of Stroll as well, because the gap between them was tight between Stroll's pit window to Ocon, and I think if Giovinazzi was in front of Ocon, then there would have not been that sort of gap there. So yeah, it's sort of a little bit annoying because it's 10th, but it really was very close to being 8th, and that for a team like Alfa Romeo, I mean, this is their first point of the season. For a team like them, every point is crucial. Yeah,
definitely. And he is one that I have been very impressed with, I think, this year. I'd put him with Ocon. Honestly, I didn't rate him because I also know that the car is sort of,
Yeah.
But like I really think that he's sort of coming into his own.
Yeah, yeah. This will be his third full season now. And yeah, in his first full season, he didn't look really like he was maybe cut out for it, but you know, you can forgive with it being a rookie season. And last year was kind of inconsistent. Like some of the time he looked like he comfortably had the beating of Raikkonen, and some of the times there were just still silly mistakes that crept in. But this year, I think he's pretty much outperformed Raikkonen at every event, pretty
I
much.
think so.
And yeah, looking strong, and he needs to. He needs to fight this year because he will be under pressure to be dropped from that team with people like, I know, Ilott, who's not in F2 this year, who's sitting there.
Just
He
waiting.
has done a test for them.
Yes, he did
I
a test
believe.
for them, and I think he's a reserve driver.
Yeah. So he's there waiting. You have other Ferrari drivers like Schwartzman in F2 who,
I'd quite like to see him go up.
yeah, who are there like ready, waiting to take that Ferrari junior seat away from Giovinazzi. But he's doing a good job, I think, so far. Showing that he deserves to be there, certainly this year, and hopefully proving enough to show that he's going to be there next year as well. I like him. I like the guy.
Yeah,
Good old Italian Jesus.
I think he's. Anyway, on that note, shall we end?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, so yeah, thank you very much, everyone, for joining us for this podcast again. Next time out is Baku in 2 weeks' time, but next weekend is the Indy 500, so we might do a little podcast covering that as well, if you're lucky.
Oh, really?
Yeah, maybe.
Oh my goodness, I don't think I can pay attention for the whole of the Indy 500.
Yeah. But yeah, as usual, you can find us on Instagram, Twitter, and such. We're at the F1 Couple. Like, subscribe, follow, whatever you want on, depending on what platform you're following us on. And until the next time, we've been the F1 Couple, and we'll see you later.